She was pushed to abort the pregnancy by the billionaire CEO. 4 years later, he sees her with a son who has his eyes and birthmark. "I've been clear from the beginning that children aren't part of my plan," he said, his voice cold with finality. "Vertex is my legacy. I can help you take care of this discreetly, but I need you to understand that this pregnancy cannot continue if you want a future with me." The words hung in the air between them like shattered glass, each syllable cutting deeper than the last. Maya's hand instinctively moved to her still flat stomach, a protective gesture that spoke volumes. "So that's it?" she whispered, her voice barely audible in the cavernous penthouse. "An ultimatum? Your empire or our child?" Dominic's expression remained impassive, the same face that had graced countless magazine covers, handsome, determined, unyielding. "It's not an ultimatum, Maya. It's reality. I'm not father material. I never claimed to be." For years later, fate would force him to confront those words in the most unexpected way. Have you ever wondered what happens when life gives you a second chance you never asked for? When the choice you thought was final suddenly reappears, demanding to be reconsidered. This is the story of a powerful man who believed his legacy could only be measured in dollars and innovation, until he came face to face with the living legacy he once rejected. If you've ever had to choose between what's easy and what's right, or if you believe that people can truly change when given the chance, this story will resonate deep in your soul. Hit that like button if you believe some mistakes, no matter how devastating, deserve a path to redemption. I'm Mr. Harrison, and today I'm sharing the remarkable story of how a chance encounter in a park changed the lives of a billionaire CEO, a courageous single mother, and the innocent child connecting them. The autumn air carried a crisp bite as Maya Donovan hurried across Westlake Park, her hand firmly clasping her 4-year-old son's smaller one. They were running late for Eli's pediatrician appointment, and Maya had taken the shortcut through the park despite knowing it bordered the gleaming headquarters of Vertex Technologies, the last place on Earth she wanted to be. "Mommy, can we get hot chocolate after?" Eli asked, his amber eyes bright with hope beneath a mop of dark curls that never seemed to stay combed for long. "If you're brave for Dr. Peterson, absolutely," Maya promised, smiling down at her son. She was so focused on Eli that she didn't notice the small group of executives exiting the glass tower ahead until it was too late to change course. Her steps faltered as she recognized the tall figure at the center, Dominic Archer, founder and CEO of Vertex Technologies, and the man who had once told her that having a child would be the biggest mistake of both our lives. For years had passed since she'd last seen him, since she'd walked away from his ultimatum and his empire with nothing but her dignity and the tiny life growing inside her. 4 years of building a new existence, of midnight feedings and first steps, of scraping together freelance design work between daycare pickups and pediatrician visits. For years, and yet the sight of him still made her heart stutter painfully in her chest. Maya tightened her grip on Eli's hand, hoping to hurry past unnoticed, but fate had other plans. Dominic glanced up from his conversation, his gaze sweeping casually across the park, until it landed on her. She watched recognition dawn in his expression, followed immediately by shock as his attention shifted to the child at her side. Even from 20 feet away, Maya could see the color drain from his face. Eli, oblivious to the tension, tugged at her hand. "Mommy, my shoes untied." Maya crouched to fix the lace, using the moment to compose herself. When she straightened, Dominic had broken away from his group and was walking toward them with the purposeful stride that had once made her heart race for entirely different reasons. "Maya," he said, his voice as rich and commanding as she remembered. His eyes, however, never left Eli's face. "Dominic," she acknowledged, fighting to keep her voice steady. "We're in a hurry, so if you'll excuse us." "Wait." The word wasn't a request. "Please." She hesitated, torn between flight and the confrontation she'd imagined countless times over the years. "Who's that?" Eli asked, studying the stranger with innocent curiosity. "Just someone Mommy used to know," Maya answered carefully. "From a long time ago." Dominic crouched down to Eli's level, his bespoke suit incongruous against the playground woodchips. "Hello there. What's your name?" Elijah James Donovan. The boy answered proudly. I'm 4.5. 4.5, Dominic repeated softly. That's very grown up. Maya watched as Dominic's gaze traced her son's features, the shape of his eyes, identical to Dominic's own, and then, most damning of all, the small crescent-shaped birthmark at his temple, partially hidden by his curls. The same distinctive mark that 3 generations of Archer men had carried. When Dominic looked up at her again, his expression contained multitudes. Shock, anger, wonder, accusation. We really need to go, Maya said firmly, tugging Eli away. His doctor is waiting. Maya. Dominic's voice stopped her again. We need to talk. She turned back, meeting his gaze directly. No, we don't. You made your position perfectly clear 4 years ago. Nothing has changed. Everything has changed, he countered, gesturing subtly toward Eli. Not for me, she replied. Goodbye, Dominic. As she walked away, Maya felt his eyes on her back, knew with certainty that this brief encounter was only the beginning. Dominic Archer had built a technology empire through relentless determination and an unwillingness to accept defeat. He wouldn't simply let them disappear again. The text came 3 hours later, while Eli was napping after his appointment. We need to talk. Name the time and place. Maya stared at her phone, memories flooding back unbidden. She had been 28 when they met, a talented UX designer recruited to help revamp Vertex's flagship product. Dominic, 12 years her senior, had taken a personal interest in the project, sitting in on meetings, challenging her ideas, pushing her to think bigger. Their first real conversation had happened late one evening, when most of the team had already gone home. Maya was still at her desk, refining a user interface that had been giving her trouble all day. You're still here, Dominic had said, appearing in the doorway of the design lab. It's nearly midnight. Maya had looked up, startled to find the CEO watching her. I want to get this right, she'd replied simply. The current flow is clunky. Users deserve better. Instead of leaving, he'd pulled up a chair beside her. Show me. For the next 2 hours, they'd worked side by side, debating user psychology and interface design. By the time they finished, the sun was threatening to rise, and something had shifted between them. You don't back down, he'd observed as they rode the elevator down together, even when arguing with the boss. Should I apologize for that? She'd asked, suddenly aware of their proximity in the small space. Never, he'd replied, his eyes holding hers. It's refreshing. Their attraction had been immediate and undeniable, though Maya had resisted at first, wary of office politics and power imbalances. But Dominic had been persistent, respectful, seemingly genuine in his admiration for her mind as much as her beauty. Have dinner with me, he'd asked a week later. Not as your CEO, just as someone who wants to know you better. People will talk, she'd countered. Let them, he'd shrugged. I've never cared much for other people's opinions. For 8 intoxicating months, she'd believed she'd found something rare. A partnership of equals despite their different positions. A connection that transcended the physical. Dominic had shown her a world she'd never known. From private gallery openings to spontaneous weekend trips to Paris. But more importantly, he'd seemed to value her perspective, her creativity, her independence. You challenge me, he told her one night as they lay tangled in the sheets of his penthouse bedroom. No one challenges me anymore. Poor billionaire, she teased. Surrounded by yes men and sycophants. Exactly why I need you, he'd replied, pulling her closer. To keep me honest. But honesty had its limits. As Maya discovered the morning she'd sat alone in her bathroom, staring at the positive pregnancy test in her trembling hands. She'd planned how to tell him carefully, choosing a quiet evening at his penthouse rather than a public setting. She'd even allowed herself to imagine a positive reaction. Surprise, certainly, but perhaps also a cautious joy, an openness to a future neither had planned but might embrace together. How wrong she had been. I've been clear from the beginning that children aren't part of my plan, he'd said, his voice cold with finality. Vertex is my legacy. I can help you take care of this discreetly, but But I need you to understand that this pregnancy cannot continue if you want a future with me. The man who had claimed to value her independence was suddenly issuing ultimatums. The partner who had admired her strength now expected her to bend to his will on the most personal decision of her life. She'd walked out of his penthouse that night and never returned, changing her phone number and taking a design job with a small firm across the city. She'd told no one who her baby's father was, not even her closest friends. Some secrets were safer kept. Now, staring at his text, Maya knew the careful life she'd constructed was about to unravel. Dominic had seen Eli. He knew. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Meridian Park. Public place, short conversation. She finally replied. His response was immediate. I'll be there. If you've ever had to make a difficult choice that changed the entire course of your life, hit that like button right now. And if you're curious to see what happens when these two strong-willed people confront each other after 4 years of silence, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. The most revealing part of the story is still to come, and you won't want to miss what happens when a man who rejected fatherhood comes face to face with the son he never knew. Maya arrived at the park early, choosing a bench with clear sightlines in all directions. She'd arranged for her neighbor to watch Eli, unwilling to subject him to the tension of this meeting. The playground buzzed with afternoon activity, parents chatting while children clambered over equipment. Normal people living normal lives, untouched by the drama about to unfold on her quiet bench. Dominic appeared precisely at 2, as punctual in this as he was in all things. He dressed down in dark jeans and a gray cashmere sweater, but still managed to look like he'd stepped from the pages of a luxury magazine. Heads turned as he crossed the park, recognition flickering on faces. The tech billionaire was a local celebrity. His image frequently splashed across business publications and society pages. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, taking a seat beside her, careful to leave appropriate space between them. "Let's not pretend this is a social call," Maya replied. "Say what you came to say." Dominic studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "He's mine, isn't he? Elijah." "Biologically, yes," she acknowledged. "In every way that matters, he's mine." "Why didn't you tell me?" The question held a dangerous edge. "You made it abundantly clear you didn't want children," Maya said evenly. "You pushed me to terminate the pregnancy. What was I supposed to think had changed? I had a right to know. And what would you have done with that knowledge?" she challenged. "Suddenly embrace fatherhood after telling me a child would ruin everything you'd built? Or would you have made our lives hell with lawyers and threats and attempts to control a situation you'd already rejected?" His jaw tightened. "You didn't give me the chance to decide." "No, I didn't," Maya agreed. "I made the decision that protected my child and myself from someone who had already shown exactly how he felt about our existence." Silence stretched between them, taut with unspoken accusations and defenses. Around them, life continued, children laughing, parents calling. The everyday symphony of family life that had been Maya's world for 4 years and completely foreign to Dominic's. "I want to know him," Dominic finally said, his voice softer than before. "I want to be part of his life." Maya shook her head. "It's not that simple. I understand you're angry." "This isn't about anger," she interrupted. "This is about Eli's well-being. You can't just walk into his life because you've suddenly decided you're interested in being a father. He's a person, not a project you can acquire when it suits you." "I know that," Dominic insisted. "But he's my son. He has my eyes, my birthmark, my blood. Doesn't that count for something?" "Biology isn't the same as parenthood," Maya countered. "Parenthood is showing up every day, through fevers and nightmares and skinned knees. It's putting someone else's needs before your own, consistently, even when it's inconvenient or difficult." "I want the chance to learn," he said, and for the first time, Maya heard something unfamiliar in his voice: uncertainty. "I'm not claiming to know how to be a father, but I want to try." Maya studied him, searching for the manipulation or calculation she expected. Instead, she found something that looked almost like vulnerability in the eyes so similar to her son's. "Why?" she asked simply. "What's changed?" Dominic looked away, watching the children on the playground. Seeing him yesterday, it was like looking at myself at that age. But it was more than that. He paused, seeming to struggle with words, a rarity for a man known for his articulate persuasiveness. It was like seeing a possibility I'd convinced myself couldn't exist. A possibility? Of something beyond Vertex. Beyond the next acquisition or product launch. He met her gaze again. I told myself for years that I didn't want children because I'd be a terrible father. That I was sparing a child from having someone like me as a parent. And now I'm asking for a chance to prove myself wrong. His voice was quiet but firm. I'm not asking to disrupt your lives or take him from you. I'm asking for the opportunity to know my son, and for him to know me, on whatever terms you think are appropriate. Maya felt the weight of the decision pressing on her. She'd spent 4 years protecting Eli, building their life carefully, keeping him safe from the rejection she'd experienced. But she'd also raised him to be compassionate, to believe in second chances. I need time to think, she finally said. This isn't just about you and me anymore. I understand, Dominic nodded. Take whatever time you need. I'm not going anywhere. As they parted ways, Maya felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. The careful boundaries she'd constructed were crumbling, forcing her to navigate unfamiliar terrain. Could she trust Dominic's apparent change of heart? Or was this simply another manifestation of his need to control, to possess what he perceived as his? That night, after tucking Eli into bed, Maya sat at her small kitchen table, a cup of tea growing cold before her as she wrestled with her decision. The apartment was quiet, modest but comfortable, the home she'd created for her son through determination and countless sacrifices. What's the right thing to do? She whispered to the empty room. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend, Layla. How did the meeting go? Do I need to help you hide a body? Maya smiled despite herself. Layla was the only person who knew the full story of Eli's parentage, having pieced it together from Maya's careful omissions and the unmistakable resemblance between the boy and the tech mogul whose face occasionally appeared on their social media feeds. No homicide necessary, Maya texted back. He wants to be part of Eli's life. Layla's response was immediate. And you believe him? That was the question, wasn't it? Did she believe him? Could she trust the sincerity of a man who had once discarded them so easily? I don't know, she replied honestly. He seemed different. People don't change that much, came Layla's cautious response. Especially men with that much power and money. Be careful, Em. Maya set her phone down, knowing her friend's concern came from a place of love. But there had been something in Dominic's expression when he looked at Eli. A flash of wonder, of recognition, of longing, that had seemed genuine. And despite everything, she had once known him better than anyone. The Dominic she'd fallen in love with, before the pregnancy had revealed his limitations, had been capable of depth, of growth, of surprising vulnerability. Over the following weeks, Maya watched with cautious surprise as Dominic respected her request for space, while making his continued interest clear. There were no legal threats, no attempts to leverage his considerable power and resources. Instead, there were thoughtful messages asking about Eli's interests, books on parenting delivered to her apartment, and finally, a proposal for a carefully structured first meeting. I've been reading about child development, he told her during one of their brief phone conversations. About the importance of stability and trust. I don't want to rush this. The humility in his approach was so unlike the Dominic she'd known that Maya found herself increasingly willing to consider the possibility that seeing Eli had genuinely changed something fundamental in him. When she finally agreed to introduce them, it was on neutral ground, a children's science museum on a quiet Tuesday morning when few other visitors would be present. Maya had prepared Eli as best she could, explaining that they were meeting a friend of Mommy's who wanted very much to know him. Is he nice? Eli had asked, his innocent question cutting to the heart of what mattered. He can be, Maya had answered truthfully, and he's very interested in meeting you. Why? Maya had hesitated, not yet ready to explain the full complexity of their situation. Because you're a very special boy, and he likes special people. Dominic arrived early, visibly nervous in a way Maya had never seen during their previous relationship. He'd brought a gift, not the extravagant offering she might have expected, but a simple, age-appropriate robotics kit that aligned perfectly with Eli's current fascination with how things work. "Hello again, Elijah," Dominic said, crouching to the boy's level. "I'm very happy to meet you properly this time." Eli regarded him with curious eyes. "Mommy says you make computers and robots and stuff." "That's right," Dominic smiled. "Would you like to see something cool that robots can do?" As she watched them interact, Maya felt a complex tangle of emotions. There was the expected anxiety, the protective instinct to shield Eli from potential disappointment. But there was also something unexpected, a faint warmth at seeing parts of her son reflected in this man, connections she tried to ignore for years. "He's good with him," Layla observed later that week, after Maya had recounted the museum visit. "But that doesn't mean he's changed, Maya. Men like Dominic Archer are used to getting what they want. Maybe right now what he wants is to play happy families." "You didn't see him," Maya countered. "The way he looked at Eli, it wasn't possession or control. It was wonder." "Just be careful," Layla warned. "For both your sakes. If you've ever had to decide whether someone deserves a second chance after hurting you deeply, hit that like button. And if you're wondering whether Dominic's change of heart is genuine or just another form of control, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. In our next segment, we'll see if a man who built his identity on power and success can truly learn to put someone else's needs before his own. The first real test of Dominic's commitment came 3 weeks after the museum visit. They had established a careful routine, supervised visits once a week, always in public places, always with Maya present. Eli had warmed to Mr. Dominic quickly, delighted by the man's knowledge of technology and genuine interest in his questions. Then came the night Eli spiked a fever of 103, his small body burning with infection as Maya rushed him to the emergency room at 2 a.m. Without thinking, operating on pure instinct, she had called Dominic. "Eli's sick," she'd said when he answered immediately, despite the hour. "We're at Mercy General. I'm scared." "I'm on my way," Dominic had replied without hesitation. 20 minutes. He'd arrived in 18, still wearing the dress pants and rumpled shirt from whatever late meeting he'd been in. His hair disheveled as if he'd run his hands through it repeatedly during the drive. The sight of him striding through the emergency room doors, eyes scanning frantically until they found her, had stirred something Maya had thought long buried. "Where is he? What happened?" Dominic asked, his usual commanding presence replaced by genuine concern. "They're running tests," Maya explained, her voice hoarse from worry. "His fever spiked so suddenly. He was fine at bedtime and then..." Without thinking, Dominic pulled her into an embrace. For a moment, Maya allowed herself to lean into his strength, to accept the comfort she'd been too proud to seek from anyone else. "Mr. and Mrs. Donovan?" a nurse called, breaking the moment. Maya pulled away quickly. "It's just Ms. Donovan," she corrected, moving toward the nurse. "This is a friend." The look that flashed across Dominic's face, a mixture of hurt and resignation, was gone so quickly Maya almost thought she'd imagined it. But there was no time to analyze it as they were led to Eli's room, where the small boy lay pale against the hospital sheets, and 4 in his tiny arm. "Mommy," he whimpered, reaching for her. Then his eyes widened slightly. "Mr. Dominic came too?" "Of course I did, buddy," Dominic said, his voice gentle as he approached the bed. "Your mom called and said you weren't feeling well. I wanted to make sure you were okay." "It hurts," Eli admitted, his lower lip trembling. "I know," Dominic said, carefully sitting on the edge of the bed. "But you know what? You're being incredibly brave. Much braver than I would be." "Really?" Eli asked, distracted momentarily from his discomfort. "Absolutely. When I was a little boy and got sick, I was a terrible patient. Just ask your mom. I'm still not great with needles." Maya watched in amazement as Dominic continued to distract Eli with stories and gentle questions, keeping the boy's mind off his discomfort until the doctor arrived with a diagnosis of strep throat and a treatment plan. Throughout the long night, Dominic never left. He made coffee runs, charmed the night nurses into bringing extra blankets, and even managed to get the cafeteria to send up hot food long after it had officially closed. When Eli finally fell asleep around dawn, medication bringing his fever down at last, Dominic insisted Maya take the room's only comfortable chair. "You need to rest," he said firmly. "I'll keep watch." "You have a company to run," she protested weakly. "Board meetings and acquisitions and whatever else billionaires do on Wednesdays." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "The company will survive without me for a day. Eli is more important." Those 5 simple words, "Eli is more important," struck Maya with unexpected force. In all their time together before, nothing had ever been more important to Dominic than Vertex Technologies. Not even her. Not even their unborn child. Yet here he was, rumpled and exhausted, choosing to sit in an uncomfortable hospital chair rather than return to his empire. All for a little boy he'd known for less than a month. "Thank you," she whispered, finally allowing her eyes to close. "For coming. For staying." "Always," he replied softly, and in her exhaustion, Maya almost believed him. Eli recovered quickly, as children often do, but something fundamental had shifted in the delicate balance between Maya and Dominic. The emergency room visit had revealed a side of him she'd never seen, or perhaps had never allowed herself to see. A man capable of putting someone else's needs before his own, of showing up when it mattered most. Over the following months, Dominic gradually became a presence in their lives. He approached fatherhood with the same focused determination he brought to business, but tempered with a humility Maya had never seen in him before. He read parenting books, consulted child development experts, and most importantly, followed Maya's lead on what Eli needed. "I want to take him to the aquarium this weekend," he suggested one evening as they sat on Maya's small balcony, Eli already asleep inside. "He's been talking about marine biology since that documentary we watched." "He'd love that," Maya agreed. "But Dominic, we should talk about what this is becoming." "What do you mean?" "These visits, these outings, they're starting to feel like family time." She chose her words carefully. "I need to know what your expectations are. For Eli. For us." Dominic was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the city lights spread below them. "I don't have expectations," he finally said. "I have hopes." "Which are?" "That I can be the father Eli deserves. That someday he might be proud to call me dad." He turned to look at her directly. "That you might eventually forgive me for the worst mistake of my life." "I have forgiven you," Maya said softly. "I wouldn't have let you into Eli's life if I hadn't." "But not into yours," he observed, his tone free of accusation. "And I understand why. I broke something precious between us, Maya. I know that." The honesty in his voice, the absence of the manipulation she'd once feared, touched something deep within her. This was not the same man who had issued cold ultimatums in a penthouse 4 years ago. This was someone who had been humbled, who had learned from his mistakes, who was trying, imperfectly but sincerely, to be better. "One step at a time," she said finally. "Eli comes first. Always." "Always," he agreed without hesitation. Their relationship evolved, moving from tense coexistence to a cautious partnership. The attraction that had once drawn them together remained, complicated now by history and responsibility, but also deepened by watching each other in this new context. The first time Eli called Dominic Dad was during a weekend trip to the coast, 3 months after the hospital night. They had been building an elaborate sandcastle, Dominic following Eli's increasingly ambitious architectural directions with serious concentration, when the word slipped out naturally. "Dad, we need more water for the moat," Eli said, holding out his bucket. Maya, sitting nearby with a book, froze. Dominic looked up, his expression a mixture of shock and something that might have been joy. "Sure, buddy," he managed, taking the bucket with hands that trembled slightly. "One moat. Coming right up." Later, when Eli was occupied with collecting shells, Dominic approached Maya where she sat watching the waves. "I didn't ask him to call me that," he said quietly. I would never pressure him. I know, Maya assured him. He made that choice himself. Are you okay with it? Dominic's smile was unlike any she'd seen before. Unguarded, genuine, almost boyish in its happiness. More than okay. I never thought I'd hear that word directed at me. Never thought I'd want to. And now it's the most important title I've ever held, he said simply. Better than CEO, better than founder, better than anything. That evening, after they'd returned to the beach house Dominic had rented and Eli had fallen asleep, exhausted from his day of castle building and shell collecting, they sat together on the deck overlooking the moonlit ocean. He has your creativity, Dominic observed, nursing a glass of wine. That castle design was impressive. Future architect, maybe. And your stubbornness? She countered with a small smile. Once he gets an idea in his head, there's no changing it. Fair point, he acknowledged. Maya, I know I can never undo what I said 4 years ago. I was wrong, terrified of failing at the one thing my own father failed at so spectacularly. Parenthood. He nodded. My father saw children as extensions of himself, possessions to be controlled and molded. I was determined never to inflict that on another human being. His gaze drifted toward the house where Eli slept. I didn't understand that there was another option, that I could choose a different path. And now, Maya asked softly, now I'm grateful every day that you were stronger than I was, he said, his voice rough with emotion. That you chose him when I couldn't. That despite everything, you're allowing me the chance to know him. Maya studied the man before her, still recognizably the driven, brilliant CEO she'd fallen for years ago, but changed in fundamental ways by the presence of the small boy sleeping inside. The transformation wasn't complete or perfect. Dominic still struggled with patience, still occasionally defaulted to trying to solve problems with money rather than presence. But he was trying, learning, growing. I didn't just choose him, she said finally. I chose a different vision of what family could be than the one you offered. I chose to believe that love matters more than power or convenience. You were right, Dominic said simply. About everything. As they sat in the quiet of the transformed beach house, Maya realized that something had shifted between them. Not a return to what was, but the tentative beginning of something new. Something built on harder foundations than passion or ambition. On growth, on forgiveness, on the shared love for the remarkable child who connected them. The true test of Dominic's transformation came 6 months into their new arrangement, when Vertex Technologies faced a crisis that threatened the company's future. A major security breach had exposed sensitive user data, sending the stock plummeting and triggering investigations from multiple regulatory agencies. I need to cancel this weekend, Dominic told Maya over the phone, his voice tight with stress. The board is in emergency sessions, and the legal team needs me available around the clock. Maya felt a familiar disappointment settle in her chest, the same feeling she'd experienced countless times during their previous relationship when Vertex had always taken priority. Eli's been looking forward to the science fair all week, she said carefully. He's excited to show you his project. There was a long pause on the line. Then, to Maya's surprise, Dominic said, What time does it start? 3 o'clock. But Dominic, if you're in the middle of a crisis, I'll be there, he interrupted. The board meeting ends at 2. I'll come straight from the office. Are you sure? This sounds serious. It is serious, he acknowledged. But so is my commitment to Eli. I promised him I'd be there, and I will be. Maya hung up with mixed emotions. She wanted to believe Dominic would follow through, but experience had taught her that Vertex always came first in moments of crisis. She prepared herself to comfort a disappointed Eli, just in case. The science fair was crowded with excited children and proud parents when they arrived. Eli bounced nervously beside his display, a working model of renewable energy sources that he and Dominic had spent weeks perfecting together. Do you think Dad will really come? He asked, scanning the entrance for the 10th time. He said he would try his very best, Maya answered carefully. But remember, he has a big problem at work today. Eli's face fell slightly, but he nodded with a maturity that sometimes startled Maya. I know. It's okay if he can't make it. You're here. Maya's heart ached at his easy acceptance, his readiness to be disappointed by a father figure who had only recently entered his life. This was exactly what she had feared, Eli becoming attached, only to learn the harsh lesson that Dominic's priorities would always lie elsewhere when push came to shove. The judging began at 3:30. By 3:45, Maya had resigned herself to Dominic's absence. She took photos of Eli proudly explaining his project to the judges, determined that at least one parent would fully document this milestone. Then, just as the judges moved to the next display, a commotion at the entrance caught her attention. Dominic was hurrying through the doors, still in his business suit, slightly out of breath as if he'd run from the car. His eyes scanned the room frantically until they found Eli. The boy's face lit up with pure joy. "Dad, you came." "Of course I came," Dominic said, crouching to receive Eli's enthusiastic hug. "I wouldn't miss this for anything. I'm sorry I'm late. Did I miss the judging?" "They just finished with me," Eli reported excitedly. "But you can still see my presentation. I remembered everything we practiced." As Eli launched into his carefully rehearsed explanation of wind and solar energy, Maya noticed something she hadn't seen before: Dominic's complete and undivided attention. No checking his phone, no distracted glances, no signs that his mind was elsewhere. Despite what must be an unprecedented crisis at Vertex, he was fully present, his focus entirely on the small boy beaming up at him. Later, after Eli had proudly accepted his honorable mention ribbon and they were walking to the car, Maya finally asked the question that had been on her mind. "How bad is it?" At Vertex, Dominic's expression tightened momentarily. "Bad. The stock dropped 20% today. The board is pushing for immediate action, possibly sacrificing some key privacy features to appease regulators. And you left in the middle of that to come to an elementary school science fair?" He looked at her directly, his gaze unwavering. 5 years ago, I wouldn't have. Nothing would have pulled me away from the office during a crisis like this. But now, he looked at her directly, his gaze unwavering. 5 years ago, I wouldn't have. Nothing would have pulled me away from the office during a crisis like this. But now. He glanced at Eli, who was skipping ahead of them, ribbon clutched tightly in his hand. "Now I understand there are different kinds of failure. Disappointing shareholders is one thing. Disappointing him is something I can't bear to do." The simple honesty in his voice touched something deep within Maya. This, more than any grand gesture or declaration, proved that Dominic had truly changed. Not perfectly, not completely. He was still the driven, ambitious man she'd always known. But his priorities had shifted in a fundamental way she had never thought possible. That night, after Eli was asleep, Maya found herself standing on her small balcony, staring at the city lights and thinking about second chances, about forgiveness, about the possibility of building something new from the ruins of what had been broken. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Dominic standing there, still in his work clothes but with his tie loosened, looking exhausted but determined. "I'm sorry to come by so late," he said. I needed to see you. Is everything okay? With Vertex?" "No," he admitted with a tired smile. "But that's not why I'm here." Maya stepped back, allowing him to enter. "Why are you here, then?" Dominic moved to the living room but remained standing, as if too restless to sit. "Today, when I was sitting in that board meeting, watching everyone panic about stock prices and market share, all I could think about was Eli's face if I didn't show up. And yours." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of vulnerability she remembered from their past. "I realized something important." "What's that?" "That I've been trying so hard to be a good father to Eli, to make up for my initial rejection, that I haven't properly addressed what I did to you." His voice grew softer. "I hurt you, Maya, deeply. I put you in an impossible position and then punished you for choosing the right path when I couldn't see it." Maya felt her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. "Dominic, please let me finish," he said gently. I've spent these months focused on earning Eli's trust, on learning to be the father he deserves. But I haven't told you what you deserve to hear, that I was wrong, that I regret every day the pain I caused you, that watching you mother our son with such grace and strength has shown me what true courage looks like. The words hung between them, honest and raw in a way their conversations had rarely been, even during the best times of their previous relationship. I don't expect forgiveness, he continued when she remained silent. And I'm not asking for us to go back to what we were. That's not possible and maybe not even desirable. But I want you to know that I see you, Maya, not just as Eli's mother, but as the remarkable woman who stood her ground when it mattered most, who chose love over fear, who built a beautiful life despite every obstacle. Maya felt tears threatening and blinked them back. Why are you telling me this now? Because life is unpredictable, he said simply. Because today reminded me that what matters isn't what we build or what we own, but who we become and who we love. And because you deserve to hear it, whether or not it changes anything between us. In that moment, looking at the man before her, humbled by parenthood, changed by love, finally able to see beyond his own ambitions, Maya felt something shift within her heart. Not forgiveness, which she had already given, but something else. Something like possibility. It changes things, she said softly. Not everything, not all at once, but something. Over the following months, they navigated this new territory carefully. There were setbacks. Moments when Dominic's workaholic tendencies resurfaced. Times when Maya's protective instincts made her hold Eli too close. But there were also breakthroughs. Family dinners where laughter flowed easily. Quiet evenings when they could discuss Eli's future with shared purpose. Moments of connection that felt both familiar and entirely new. On Eli's 5th birthday, they hosted a small party at Dominic's home. A space that had been transformed over the past year, becoming warmer, more welcoming, filled with evidence of a child's presence. As they watched Eli blow out his candles, surrounded by friends and the makeshift family they had created, Dominic reached for Maya's hand. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for giving me a second chance. For showing me what matters." "You did the hard work," she replied, squeezing his hand. "You changed, because you were brave enough to show me a better way." His eyes held hers, filled with an emotion that needed no name. "I love him so much, Maya, and I never stopped loving you, even when I was too blind to see what that should have meant." The words hung between them, not a demand or expectation, but a simple truth offered without pressure. Maya felt her heart expand with the recognition that sometimes, the hardest journeys lead to the most unexpected destinations. "I know," she said softly. "I'm beginning to believe that love isn't just about grand passions or perfect moments. It's about growth, about becoming better together than we could be apart." As Eli ran to them, face alight with birthday joy, they opened their circle to include him. 3 people connected by blood and choice and the 1,000 small decisions that had led them to this moment of possibility. "Make a wish, Dad," Eli urged, pointing to the remaining candle flickering on his cake. Dominic looked from his son to Maya, his expression one of wonder and gratitude. "I don't need to," he said simply. "Everything I could wish for is already here." Later that night, after the guests had gone and Eli had fallen asleep surrounded by new toys, Maya and Dominic stood in the quiet kitchen, cleaning up the last of the party debris. "He has your creativity," Dominic observed, watching as Maya artfully arranged leftover cake into containers. "And your kindness. And your stubbornness," she countered with a small smile. "And your eyes, Maya." Dominic set down the plate he was holding, his expression serious. "I know we've been taking things slowly, rebuilding trust, focusing on Eli, and I respect that pace. But I want you to know that whenever, if ever, you're ready for more, I'm here. Not as the man I was, but as the man you and Eli have helped me become." Maya studied the man before her, still recognizably the driven, brilliant CEO she'd fallen for years ago, but changed in fundamental ways by the presence of the small boy sleeping down the hall, by the journey they had taken together, by the choices that had broken them apart and the love that had, improbably, begun to heal those fractures. "I didn't just choose him," she said finally, echoing words she'd spoken months before. "I chose a different vision of what family could be than the one you offered. I chose to believe that love matters more than power or convenience." "You were right," Dominic said simply. "About everything." "Not everything," Maya corrected gently. "I didn't believe people could truly change. I didn't believe second chances could lead to something better than what was lost. I'm still learning that lesson." As she stepped toward him, closing the distance between them with deliberate purpose, Maya realized that something had shifted between them. Not a return to what was, but the tentative beginning of something new. Something built on harder foundations than passion or ambition. On growth, on forgiveness, on the shared love for the remarkable child who connected them. She reached up, her hand gently touching his face, tracing the lines that hadn't been there 4 years ago. Lines of worry, of growth, of the hard-won wisdom that had transformed him from the man who had once rejected their child into the father who would rearrange the world to see his son smile. "Maya," he whispered, her name a question and a prayer on his lips. She answered not with words but by rising on her toes, bringing her lips to his in a kiss that held all the complexity of their journey. The pain of the past, the joy of the present, the promise of a future neither could have imagined when they'd stood in that penthouse 4 years ago, making choices that would alter the course of their lives forever. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, both of them aware of all that lay between them. The hurt, the growth, the forgiveness still taking root. But as Dominic's arms encircled her, drawing her closer with a reverence that spoke volumes about how he valued this second chance, the kiss deepened into something more profound. A recognition that sometimes love doesn't follow a straight path, but finds its way home through detours and difficulties that ultimately make it stronger. When they finally parted, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. His eyes closed as if memorizing the moment. "I don't deserve this," he whispered, "but I promise you, I will spend every day trying to be worthy of it." "That's exactly why you do deserve it," Maya replied softly. The man who couldn't see beyond himself 4 years ago would never have said those words. The path forward wouldn't be simple or straightforward. There were still wounds to heal, trust to rebuild, boundaries to establish. But watching Dominic transform from the man who had once seen their child as an obstacle to his ambitions into someone who rearranged board meetings to attend science fairs gave Maya hope that people could change when given reason powerful enough. And there, in the soft light of evening, with their son sleeping peacefully nearby, Maya allowed herself to consider that sometimes the most meaningful journeys begin with the hardest choices, and that family, in all its complex, imperfect forms, could be built from even the most broken beginnings. If the story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever witnessed someone change in ways you never thought possible? Do you believe that true growth comes from our biggest mistakes? Remember that sometimes the most beautiful families aren't the ones that follow a perfect path, but those that find their way back to love after weathering life's greatest challenges.